Joining us now in the group chat, Congressman James Walkinshaw. We were just talking during the break about how lawmakers are going to get to go in a room and look at unredacted files. I don't know if it's boxes. I don't know if you're timed. How's it supposed to work? And what are you going to be looking for?
Well, we have to schedule a time to go in and review the files. I think it's a mix of electronic and paper. And look, there are 3 million files with a lot of redaction. So we're going to have to be targeted in looking at the most troubling redactions.
So what are you going to be looking for?
There are patterns. Well, for me, some of the missing information, we know that survivors have laid out in their original statements to the FBI, the list of co-conspirators, others who they say were involved in these crimes. I want to determine whether any of that was redacted. Obviously, whether there are any redactions related to President Trump, members of his cabinet, or other prominent figures, quote unquote, Trump's friends, who he's concerned by being harmed due to the release of the file. So I think all of that we have to look at.
Ghislaine Maxwell supposed to be sitting. What do you expect to hear from her?
Unfortunately, we don't expect to hear a lot. We're told she's going to plead the fifth. I'm still committed and plan to make sure we ask her very specific questions. She knows who those co-conspirators are. She knows which other men were involved. She knows exactly what Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said to her when they met and she was subsequently moved to a cushy, lower security prison. I want to understand all of that. Unfortunately, it sounds like she's going to plead the fifth today. We won't get direct answers to those questions.
One more on this, because Pam Bondi is supposed to give some testimony this week as well, or be at a hearing. And earlier in the show, we had Jess Michaels on, a survivor. And I don't know if you saw their Super Bowl ad, but at the end, it's like, tell Pam Bondi to release. So here is Jess just moments ago.
Those same Republicans are being pressured to not say a word to Pam Bondi at the hearing, because that's when we're hoping things will come out, is on Wednesday. Pam Bondi has to sit before the committee. We wanted to ask them to ask hard questions, but we've heard they're being pressured by the White House to avoid the Epstein files altogether and to only talk about Pam Bondi's accomplishments.
I spoke to Jess earlier today, and I know she and other survivors plan to be at that hearing today. And I think my Republican colleagues are going to have to grapple with, can they look her and the other survivors in the eyes and place, again, their loyalty to Trump ahead of the pleas that we're hearing from Jess and other survivors to push to get the full release of the files. And look, the Deputy Attorney General said that there were 6 million files. He said that. He then said he made a subjective decision that they had over-collected 3 million files. The law doesn't allow him or Pam Bondi to make a subjective decision to not release 50% of the files. They got to release all 6 million files.
The last thing I want to talk about while I have you, I know I keep asking about everything that's being testified this week. Tomorrow, top immigration officials are going to testify before the House Homeland Security Committee. And I want to play something for you I heard from Senator Fetterman of Pennsylvania this weekend, who says, look, a government shutdown around DHS, it could be likely again because of the Democrats' long list of demands for ICE. To get that DHS funding, you guys want a lot. We'll put some of those up. No masks on ICE officers. Make them have ID. End racial profiling. Body cameras. Here's what Fetterman had to say.
I absolutely would expect that it's going to shut down. I know that we, the Democrats, we provided, I think it was 10 kinds of basic things. And then the Republican pushed back quickly, saying that that's like a Christmas wish list and that they're non-starters. I truly don't know what specifically are the Democrats' red lines, that it has to be. Certainly not going to get all 10.
The reason why I'm bringing this back is because I realize I don't know either. What's your red line?
Well, look, in a negotiation, Democrats put forward a tangible list. And the ball's in the Republicans' court now to accept or reject those things. These are things the American people support. I'll tell you the red lines for me. No masks, no secret police. They got to operate just like our local law enforcement do, with professional standards. And here's the other thing. The federal government, if they're going to smash down your door while your wife and your children are sleeping, they should get a warrant before they do it.
A judicial
Republicans-
warrant
that's
is what
right,
you're saying.
A judicial warrant. And if Republicans want to shut down the government over that, to allow federal agents to smash down the doors of any American without a warrant, they can do that. I don't think the American people will agree with it.
Do those things need to be written into law, or will an agreement do? Or are we looking at, actually having a list that's written down that has the force of law behind it, or can the DHS simply say, we will agree to those terms?
Yeah, I don't think there's any such thing as an agreement with Donald Trump. Look, he's shown that throughout his life, his career in politics and business. He makes agreements and he breaks them, so it's got to be in the law. Has to be in the law. I wish that wasn't the case, but it has to be in the law.
Yeah. And what do you think about these efforts to try and tie some immigration measures to it, specifically things around sanctuary cities have come up from Republicans. There's also a question of a pathway to, not pathway to citizenship, but like legally staying in the country with no pathway to citizenship. I think Mike Lawler brought up yesterday. What do you think of those sorts of measures that Republicans might try to tack onto this?
Yeah, and first in terms of the so-called sanctuary cities argument, look, that's an issue of federalism. State and local governments in this country get to set their policies, and those policies make sense for those communities. I don't agree with the term.
Even if it interrupts what the federal
I don't agree that
law enforcement is
yeah,
doing.
I don't agree that it interrupts. Having been in local government, what the Trump administration says is a sanctuary policy is actually their demand that local police, local sheriffs, local jails do the federal government's job in enforcing immigration law. They call that a sanctuary policy. Federal immigration enforcement agents can detain anyone anywhere in the country. They don't need assistance from local governments to do that. We know in a lot of places, local jails, including in Minnesota, do cooperate and work with federal law enforcement when folks have serious criminal histories or there are criminal warrants. But we don't need local government turned into federal immigration enforcement. That's what they call sanctuary policies.
Okay.
I just think it's false.
Yeah.
Do you get a sense from your colleagues when you're talking to your Republican colleagues on the Hill that they are starting to feel pressure on this issue, that there is concern? You see the polling.
Or are they hoping it peters out with time?
I think they're trying to buy time. I think they believe that the outrage from the American people peaked in the wake of Alex Pretty's death, and each day that passes, they hope folks will focus on other things. I think that will be a mistake, because if they continue on this path with this very brutal way of enforcing immigration law, sadly, these kind of incidents are going to continue. The videos are going to continue. Social media will continue to be dominated by it. But I do think that's the bet that they're making.
And it's sort of seeped into the culture. I'm going to turn now, this is a good segue, I promise, into Bad Bunny's halftime show. The message was the only thing more powerful than hate is love. And in his Super Bowl halftime show, here he is. Him carrying the ball there sparked a lot of jokes online about how many more yards he carried than the Patriots. I will leave that alone. But the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because towards the end, you saw him, carry the flags of many other nations in the Caribbean, nations which are under great scrutiny from this administration. You said something interesting, that it wasn't anti-Trump, but he was the anti-Trump. Can you help me make that difference?
Yeah, I mean, he was basically saying we're all together, we're all Americans, north, south. It was a unifying message for not just the U.S., but for the entire Western Hemisphere, which, I mean, if you want to get really, weird and go full, Monroe Doctrine about it,
The Donroe Doctrine.
The Donroe Doctrine. But it was very inclusive, it was very unifying, and that's kind of the opposite of Trump's politics, which are creating divisions and exploiting them.
What are you thinking when you were watching it?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank Donald Trump, because he kind of turned me on to Bad Bunny. I had not been a Bad Bunny
Really?
fan. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
My wife is going to be embarrassed by this, but I had heard of him, but I wasn't really a fan. But now, I think it was quintessentially American, honestly, the performance. And you could see in President Trump's response, which I think demonstrated his loser energy, it got under his skin because it was so quintessentially American.
Yeah, it's also interesting because the more the administration, as we talked about in the sort of white supremacist commentary in the Obama video,